Welcome back, folks, to another episode of Not Funny Guys presents Andor Season 1 Rewatch. And we are now moving on to Episode 9, Nobody's Listening. So we've got this one, and then we've got one more, One Way Out, which will kind of finish off our third arc here and lead us kind of into the penultimate and final episode. So, this episode, Nobody's Listening, originally aired November 2nd, 2022, written by Bill Willem and directed by Toby Haynes. So, we have Deidre Miro and the Imperial scientist Dr. Gorst basically torture Bix for information, only to realize that they may have a connection between Cassian and Aldhani heist. They failed to learn anything about Luthen. Basically, she's met him, she's seen him, but they don't get a name. The ISB capture a rebel pilot who was part of Anton Krieger's group. They basically find out about the raid on Spellhouse and all that stuff, and they plan to basically set things up to make it look like, so they want to keep the raid going so they can ambush him. Mon Mothma reunites with Vel, who we find out is her cousin, and encourages her to kind of keep a low profile, maintaining the facade of a rich, apolitical young woman. Sort of similar to what, it's that jibe that centimated her last episode. Mon Mothma and Tay Kolma continue working on their covert way to gather funds for rebel activities, which is going to lead them down the road to where she will basically have to entrust things with a gangster. Over on Narkina 5 in the prison, Olaf is dying. This happens through most of the episode. He is eventually euphemized by the prison medic named Dr. Rassiv when he suffers basically a massive stroke. 40 days out from his shift release. Dr. Rassiv confirms to Kino Loy and to Cassian the disturbing rumor about events somewhere else in the prison. A prisoner who had completed his sentence was sent back to work on a different level. I think they're supposed to move them prisons. Instead, they sent him back to a different level in the same prison. Everybody found out. No one's actually getting released. And to keep the cover up, they killed the whole floor. Or at least the whole section down on floor 2. Cassian and Kino realize that the prison will never let them go, and this finally pushes Kino Loy over the edge into joining with Cassian's scheme, which is another reason why I think I find Kino Loy to be so relatable, is that we get a kind of microcosm of what's going on with Cassian with him. So let's talk insight. So, there is, in the very beginning of this episode, it's worth noting that there's a real picking up of the pace in the Andor theme as we're starting to, I think, kind of like we're building steam. So let's break this down by location. So we're going to focus first on Coruscant. So we have Mon Mothma, who's now giving a speech about the whole P.O.R.D situation. Senators are heckling her or just checking out. No one cares. People are becoming very apathetic. This is when she goes home. She meets her cousin. We find out this is the connection between Vel and her. Vel brings gifts for her daughter Lita. She's been traveling, scare quotes there. They know they're both in the rebellion, and she knows she's working for Luthen. She's not giving information. No one's sharing things. Miro, of course, is back at the ISB, reporting on her interrogation on Bix, which we did sort of see that. It was creepy in so many ways. The whole involvement with Dr. Gorst is disturbing. And this is where we learn the whole connection with the Aldhani stuff. And one of the things, I guess, about the interrogation she does with Dr. Gorst is the whole, what it does in the head. But like I said, we'll find out more about that when we get to the Ferrex discussion. But like I said, she's back reporting on her findings with the whole thing that she doesn't have a name for access, but she has more information. They have the whole connection with Andor and Aldhani. And of course, they're keeping Marva, leaving her alone. They're basically treating her as bait, which is strangely enough exactly what Cinta and Vel and Luthen are doing. We go to Cyril with his mom complaining as usual. He accuses her of snooping in his room. And they have a very mistrusting, toxic relationship. It says so many things about Cyril. He accuses him of basically neglect when he went off to Morlana. but he lets her know that he's been promoted, and she's like all of a sudden quite proud of him. It's like she bases her worth off of his worth. Like I said, toxic relationship. We see Perrin, of course, when we're back with the Mon Mothma situation, they're having dinner. He scolds her about not having a husband, how she might be too old for that now, considering that he and Mon Mothma were married at 15, and Vel looks to be like somewhere pushing her mid to late 30s. It's probably right. And of course, Tay, her and Vel and Mothma have a whole conversation about how Tay's helping her out with the money. We then see Tay and Mon having this thing. There's a $400,000 withdrawal problem that is their number one concern. The accounts are scanned. They need a deposit soon. And Tay has basically come with her with a name, Davos Skulden. He claims quote unquote banker, but he's really basically a mobster. And the whole thing is they need Davos. He won't ask questions about the money. He wants to meet. Things are desperate. So we will see further developments on that. Of course, we have Cyril. He's waiting to quote unquote run into Deidre Miro in front of the ISB building. He's very much kind of stalking her. Comes to thank her for the promotion. Basically, she cleaned his record after his interrogation. That's how he got promoted. He's become very obsessed a little bit with her because he sees her as a kindred spirit. But everything he does in their conversation and everything he is doing, getting kind of close up to her, wanting to get her to work with him, comes off as just creepy. Super creepy. It's like how you imagine somebody who doesn't know how to speak to women speaks to women. If you know, you know. Miro tells him basically leave it alone. Just get away from her. She's creeped out, obviously. She gives her report to Partagast about the group and the whole connection. That's where we find out about the pilot, Anton Krieger's men. They learn about the raid of the Bell House, and they plan to leave the pilot dead so they can then let him continue the ambush and not tip their hand. So we'll see that go down later. Now, speaking of which, we're moving on over back to Ferrex. Now, this is where we get a little bit of a rewind here to what I was saying earlier about Deidre Miro. And when she's on Ferrex, there's something about her personality. The very dark, ruthless, cold approach kind of comes out. She does this whole metaphor about casting nets and fish or thief thing. We meet Dr. Gorst, who comes off as kind of like a charming sociopath. They had tortured Pax already, and that's how they learned about the fractal radio and how apparently 2 years earlier he had got this from a woman at a meeting. We don't have IDs. They were interested in Ferrex not for causing trouble, but for its location. Like we said, the hyperspace lanes. Like I said, learned all this from torture. They're hunting people, and they're finding these people who don't have a quote unquote record of troublemaking. Just once, and she talks about just wanting to have a conversation. And of course, Vix is not going to talk to her. She wants to know about the buyer, aka Axis, aka Luthen, and Cassian Andor, as well as all the stolen material that's been passed on when it came through, and who helped her. And of course, she'll get this information. Now, Vix isn't going to give it up willingly. Now, she knows about some of this stuff because through Prax, she knows that Vix has had 6 face-to-face meetings with the buyer, and that she has been the only person to utilize that fractal radio. Gorst, she then leaves her to Gorst's hands. He talks about how the Empire occupied a planet, and they found a species that didn't want to be used, and so they all died. This sort of choral, agonizing pleading. And they've apparently found a way to modify it, and they're using a specific section where you hear the dying of the children. And they found that it has a very, very directly adverse effect on human minds. And so we get to see it sort of beginning to be used on Bix, and this is how they make everybody quite cooperative. And of course, when they cut to this scene, there's an homage to the New Hope scene where Darth Vader with the interrogation droid went to torture Princess Leia. And then that scene, you saw Vader, the door shut, cut to the floor, and then we see someone walking away. We do the exact same shot here with Gorst and Bix in the room, him starting her on the little headphone thing they put on her so she can listen to these things. Door shuts, cut to the floor, guard walking away. I love that. Just a fun little homage. And of course, Miro has basically broken Bix, as we find out from her ISB meetings. Interrogation. They're keeping her at the headquarters for now. But Miro does give permission to the commandant to basically hang Pax as a example. So great. The guy didn't deserve it. But let's move on now to Narkina 5 and wrapping up our take on the episode. So this is where a lot of major events start to take place. So Ulaf is basically the oldest member of Table 5 with Cassian, and he's falling apart. And this is kind of played up through the whole episode. Cassian even steps up to help him, but he doesn't want credit. He gives it to somebody else. It's noted that Ulaf only has 41 shifts left. Cassian and the others are on the floor working, but when he goes to the bathroom, he's apparently working with other members in his group to try and figure things out about the guards. They're cutting away at some pipes and cables in the bathroom. They're observing and planning. Of course, Ulaf is now not only physically but mentally slipping as well. They have they do some more hand signaling discussion in the tubes, and they find out that something's happened on level 2. And this is when they're going off shift to their barracks. When they're doing this, there was some sort of power down restart real quickly. Kino still believes in the whole system, the way it works. He still believes he's trying to maintain order. In fact, interestingly enough, as the episode progresses, he starts to fight harder and harder and gets angrier and angrier as he's trying to fight against his loss of belief that this system is not what it seems to be. He wants to believe what he's been told. But something has happened, all right? Back in the barracks, Cassian probes Kino, talking about escape plans, asking, have you ever thought about escape plans? He's still resisting. He's got 217 shifts left. Andor doesn't, of course, believe anyone's listening at all. In fact, he even says no one's listening, giving, of course, a title of the episode. He's trying to win Kino over, wants information about the number of guards on each floor. Kino doesn't want to give up anything yet. He still believes. And Andor then quotes a line that Melchi had told him that says, we, talking about the prisoners, are cheaper than droids and easier to replace. Talking about why it doesn't seem like anything will ever change. Now, when they get back on shift in the morning, they run into the night shift, and there's a whole bunch of talk that something happened to Unit 2-5 down on level 2. Apparently, they were fried out. And so there are rumors talking about maintenance tech. Night shift leader confirms that something happens. Rumors are basically troublemaking gone terribly wrong. Kino is starting to sort of really lose his composure here. The whole view of reality is crashing down around him. He fights to control his own emotions. He's rationalizing it all. The camera even tightens in on him as you sort of see him trying to process. So you get really strong facial expressions here. He's trying to rationalize it, and then he tries to project his rationalization onto everybody else. As we get into the shift, Ulaf is still falling apart. Slowly but surely, finally collapses while Table 1 is getting punished at the end of the day. The team covers for him and shields him while they're on program. In the tube, Ulaf is being character. He needs the doctor, the med tech. Finally collapses for good. Cassian and Kino stay with him while everybody else leaves. They wait for the med tech. As we noted earlier, Dr. Rashif, whatever his name is particularly. So they are basically, the medtech arrives. It's the same actor who played Harry Potter's dad. Can't remember his name. But yeah, him. He's seen Ulaf before. Nothing he can do for him except ease his pain, basically euthanize him. He's had a massive stroke. Ulaf says he's lucky to pass so peacefully, and this triggers Cassian to what happened, and he won't answer him, and he tells Kino, keep your man in line. But then Kino finally breaks, and he says, what happened on level 2? He kind of comes over to Cassian's view, and he wants to know. And then the guard leaves to go get material for them, the bag and the trolley, basically. And then this is when the doctor basically spills the beans on apparently a prisoner from level 4 was returned to the same prison on level 2. They messed up. There is no real release. You just get reassigned. And they made a mistake, and they basically killed everyone to cover it up. And this is the moment when, of course, Kino finally breaks. And as they walk away, Kino finally tells Cassian that each floor has no more than 12 guards. All right. that leaves us for the episode. Now, before I go, a couple things I want to mention. First of all, if you haven't checked out Generation Tech's channel, I would seriously recommend it. I'm going to put a link in the description, but they have a new episode specifically talking about how the ins and outs of the ISB. So you would really recommend check that out. So go do that. I think it's awesome. In the meantime, like, subscribe, share our channel as well. The podcasts are going strong. We're still mercifully getting to the end of the Rambo series now, but you can check out our latest one on the 2008 Rambo itself that is up now. Otherwise, stay around. We're gonna who knows what we'll be going on to next, but that's where we cover our movies over on the Off the Reels. And then of course there is our other podcast, Wrestling with the Horror of It All, with Casey and Eric, and then of course the new one that's coming down the pipes with me. So do all that fun stuff, check out all that stuff, go check out Generation Tech, great channel. And until next time, long live the rebellion. Say not funny guys again.
Not funny guys again.
No, can you say not funny guys?